Yeah, if you want to be colloquial and cut down what he just said, uncle is just being uncle.
Oh no! It's only okay when you say it.
Do you have like a Finsta, like a fake Instagram account and everywhere? It's like only your friends.
No.
Welcome to another episode of Men Explain. We're talking about leadership at home and at the workplace.
Yeah. Before we do that, we just want to say a huge thank you to both Jamus and her Ting group, because I know it is GE period.
Yes.
And it is going to be a very busy period for you. So thank you for taking the time to come and talk to both of us.
You made
Thanks for the
time for us.
invitation.
Thanks for inviting us.
What would you have been doing if you weren't here? just
At this
asking.
time,
Just
yeah.
asking. Yeah. Just
Friday afternoon.
Friday. Oh, I don't think you want to know the answer
This is
to
a tricky
that.
thing. I'm an academic after all.
Yeah.
So you'll be studying.
Of course.
You know,
Deep in
last time
thought.
we spoke, I remember asking you, what do you do in your free time?
Mm,
Do you remember what you said?
probably no free time.
Yeah.
No, not just that. No, you said I read a lot. I was like,
I
what do you read? I was like,
hang on,
do you
hang on.
read
Wait,
fun stuff?
Wait, you're telling me he's got free time?
Yeah, he said. So then he goes,
Team leader
I
is not
read
very
about
happy about this right now.
economics. That's what he said.
But on a serious note, though, what would you guys be doing in this time, prepping for GE and stuff like that? I know it's a very, very busy period. So what does your day kind of look like?
To be honest, it's a bit dynamic, and that's the nature of a lot of what we do. But then during the day, I have a day job, so I'm doing my regular research and so on. But then, as I said, because academia is somewhat flexible, so we have the ability to step out and meet with other interested individuals, such as yourselves.
The other thing that we do have is regular meetings within town council. So we have status updates, and we have some of these meetings. Usually they're around lunchtime on a Thursday or Friday.
Yeah, so
Fantastic.
again, thank you for being here. But we're going to break it down a little bit today, okay? Because we're talking about male and female roles in leadership. So the first question we want to know, naturally, are either of you leaders or followers? Has there ever been like a direction like, okay, I know for a fact I'm a leader and this is the path that I want to go to? Or I know I'm a follower, I need somebody to lead me.
For me, it's not really a dichotomy, and not even a conscious am I a leader or a follower? I think it's also a lot of it's very context specific, and there's some places where obviously you defer to the the strengths or the expertise of others. But then I think the key is to know when, I guess, is suitable, and when you can actually step into a more of a leadership role, or be part of a team. So I think I tend to see things from that angle rather than I'm just going to follow instructions.
Right.
So what I've often done is try in my own capacity to make sure that I take an initiative, I follow up with things, and I step forward and move things along. But I don't have to wear a mantle of some being a leader. I don't like this cliche of leading from behind, but I think that if you're able to do these things and people end up being inspired themselves, then you don't need these titles in order
Labels.
to
I
be a
think it's
leader.
labeling that I think what Jamus was saying, and I think a lot of it is also about that sense of ownership and responsibility as well, right? Because if it's within our control, within something that within our ability or capability to do, I think it's important that we also step up for that.
But do you think men and women see it differently? Because, Ting, I know this is the first time that you're on Men Explain. And in this episode and all our episodes, actually, we always explore the differences between how men and women think. And now in leadership roles, for example, we can observe it also, Aves, like in our own, in our own workplace. I'm not sure if men and women treat the leadership role differently. Do we have a different touch to it,
So let me talk a little bit about what my reading of the academic research is. And that is that it is not unusual for women to feel that they have to prove themselves, and in I believe it was Sheryl Sandberg that said they have to lean in and kind of be more seen as a leader, whereas men are often overconfident, so they comfortably settle into something even if they have absolutely no reason to be that confident in doing something.
Thank you for the self-awareness.
So I
He
think
thought this through.
well, and it's not just that, because it has been shown time and again in academic research that this be true.
Yeah.
So I think in the end, alluding to something that Ru mentioned earlier on, that self-awareness is ultimately what's most important. So I think it is entirely possible for a man these days in a leadership role to be more self-aware of his limitations, and for a woman to feel absolutely comfortable without needing to feel that she has to be more perfect than she necessarily is.
I really wonder whether being a leader has got to do with your MBTI, like your personality. Do you guys know what your MBTI is? I'm so curious. You don't know?
Yeah, I do.
You
but
do?
I don't know if I want to make that public. Is that this kind of thing that you can put into passwords and stuff like that?
Wait, hold up. You use your MBTI as your password?
I mean,
I've done the thing quite a few times, and each time I am just very slightly extroverted.
Okay.
And then the rest is introverted.
I tend to think of in terms of strengths, so strengths profile. So I think to me that's, at least for myself, I feel that's a bit more meaningful because you actually start looking a bit further and deeper down into not just what are your strengths are within the context of a team or within the context of a role, but actually how you use those strengths. So if you overuse the strengths, you flip into, negative territory. And then if you underuse the strengths, then, again, you are not fulfilling your potential.
If I could add to that, I think labels can also be somewhat misleading. Sometimes people might think, okay, perhaps someone who's an extrovert might be better for a public
Oh, yeah, like
role.
I'll assign you to this
exactly.
and you do that,
But in truth, the difference what introverts and extroverts are people who get their energy. Extrovert will get one more from other
crowd.
people and
Yeah,
the crowd,
people,
and introverts more from within. And so that is quite different, right? Because someone could be genuinely introverted, but yet perfectly play well in a social situation.
Interestingly, actually, a lot of radio DJs are introverted.
Yeah, I was just
And
going
a
to
lot
say
of
that.
comedians, presenters, in real life, they're actually introverted.
Yeah.
Well,
The only weird thing is that the both of us are super extroverted.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I know this for sure because my wife, she is introverted. But for one period of her career, she was both a fundraiser and events organizer.
Which requires you to do so much
So
socializing.
if you've seen her work a room, you'll be completely amazed at how comfortable she looks.
Yes.
But at the end of that day, she will be exhausted.
Yes, you're
Because
drained.
Yeah, exactly. So that really is the difference. It doesn't mean that you can't do an external facing role.
Now that we've established, it's more than just being introverted or extroverted. There's so many facets to our personality. And we all going to lead differently if we were to rise to the occasion to be in that position. So how do you feel personality plays a part in that?
No, but if you want a truly representative cross-section of leaders, then you need a cross-section of personalities too, right? So you don't want
Everyone to have the
everyone to
same-
have exactly the
Yeah.
same
That's
personality.
just a recipe for
then there will
disaster
be
as well,
people
yeah.
that will clearly not be well represented by these leaders. So I think in the end, you want a mix of personalities. Ultimately, what you want, of course, is people who are reasonably likable. That always helps. But in the end, I think the range of personalities, that really matters if you want genuine diversity and representation.
Yeah. Even if you've got, the leader, but he's obviously surrounded by a leadership core and various in various levels of organization. And again, like with personalities, if they're all the same and all the strengths are the same, I don't think that if organization or that structure is going to be very functional because, you can't have everyone, either all very strong personalities or everyone's, of a
Budding
kind.
heads.
And that's why the diversity is something that, I think is really important. Yeah.
All right. So speaking of leadership, obviously that comes with authority, right? Everybody sees that in a sense where a leader has a certain amount of authority for that. But being MPs, you guys are always kind of seen as in the forefront, of everything. Is that really your leadership style? Like, would you prefer to be in the forefront or more, or I'll just kind of take a back end and lead from there?
It depends on what we're trying to achieve. Depends on which role that we are playing. Because, MP's role is multifaceted. So, for example, if we are talking about, like we talked about estate matters, right? So, of course, from that perspective, we need to, we are guided by professional advice as well. So, then our role, it wouldn't be like, I'm going to lead this technical study. So I think, again, it's a lot of the what we talked about earlier about the self-awareness piece, knowing just where your limitations are, where your strengths are, where you need a bit more help, a bit more support. So it's very hard to say that, I'm always going to be leading from the front. I think a lot of the time is part of your role as, to make this, even like the town council or make the constituency work, is to make sure that you've got the right people all working together. And I think that in itself is kind of like part of what a leader's role should be.
Yeah. So to take off from what Ru said, so clearly there are situations which call for you to take on a more executive role and to basically step forward and make the decisions, sometimes difficult decisions. In the town council in particular, where we are in more of an executive function, that's often what we do.
What are some interesting comments and requests or feedback that have been floated up to you guys before? Like anything that sticks out to you, anything that you still remember till now?
Someone once asked me about my journey and what has been the most meaningful and most fulfilling thing about it. And funnily enough, it isn't necessarily the big speeches or the marathon sessions of parliament. It's very often the little things. So there was one night we were doing house visits, and it was near the tail end of that visitation process. And we knocked on the door, and a lady came to the door. She was polite and, I have no real issues and so on. But when we probed a little bit, it was clear that something was a little bit off. So as the conversation continued, it was revealed that actually her husband the previous week had just been arrested. I won't go into details about what occurred, but she was obviously a little bit at sea.
Yeah.
And what we could do wasn't necessarily anything special, but her big fear at that time was that she was, if I recall correctly, she was also pregnant. And so she was afraid she might be kicked out of her apartment.
Okay.
And because they had a dual income household. And we, in a small way, were able to write in and to say, can we do something about rescheduling this person's mortgage repayment schedule and so on and so forth. It was, for me, it's just a letter. So I'm not doing anything marvelous. But that has always stuck with me because I know that for that person, I definitely made a difference to their lives.
Yeah.
So it's the little things sometimes that really sticks with you.
It's interesting because sometimes when residents come up to us, because they want the MP's help in certain things, they might come to us with a very, what might be quite a straightforward request on the face of it. But, again, it's also having the time and, just to literally ask a little bit more to try and find out. And then you eventually sometimes find that actually, what they're asking for, the request, the request that they're asking of you is actually part of a much wider picture, which, because I guess, sometimes when you're overwhelmed, like in a situation, you go to the most obvious thing. But actually, there are 3 or 4 other things that, you do need help with. So I do find that, it's important that, we don't just look at, what is on the face of it, but sometimes it's helpful as well to spend that time, get to know and understand, like properly or try your best to understand and, ask a couple of, probing questions. But I also feel that our role is to create the right avenues, channels, and environment so that they can do that.
And they feel open, they feel comfortable.
It's the safety. Yeah. I know a lot of people talk about psychological safety, but it really is, about, sometimes when people are put on the spot or they're put in certain, like they feel like, or it's not very, I don't really want to share some of these thoughts. So I think our job there, if you want to talk about leaders again, is really to create that infrastructure and that channel for them to
I think that's a good way to kind of talk about, leading from kind of a different perspective. Because so far we've been talking about leading in the forefront, right? Being leaders as MPs, being in the front, always being there. But this is kind of taking a step back. You're still leading, but you're doing this in a different method. You're being like, okay, I can change the way that I'm being a leader by helping these people, helping my residents and whatnot. And I think that's a very good way of looking at it as well.
I also found the similarity between DJs and politicians.
What?
We listen. It's a skill. We have to listen. So actually, the interesting thing is...
As a man, I've learned that that's really important, apparently.
Exactly, you see. This is an all-rounded thing. We learn so many lessons.
Yeah.
But when I first joined this profession and I started, this career and everything, we realized that one of the most underrated skills to have was listening.
Not just listening, actively.
Active listening. Because more often than not, we're just having conversations, we're doing our own thing, and we're not noticing anything around us. So that was definitely one of the core skills to have. How everyone explore?
I still need to learn how
You
to
still need
listen
to learn.
properly. Yeah.
How do you feel about being in the public eye? Because I know for Aves and I, and Aves, you came into the public eye a few years back.
Didn't really like it. But
This is always a new experience for us, especially because, we may not have wanted to be in such a public eye initially, right? With your life being out there, your personal life being aired. was it a culture shock for you when all of a sudden all eyes are on you? People want to know every little thing about you guys.
I wouldn't go as far as that. I think, as generally speaking, I think Singaporeans are sensitive and they're quite respectful. But of course, we do understand that people are interested in, your background and some of your experiences in life as well. Because if someone's going to be my representative, it's
They want to know.
I wouldn't say it's important, but it's helpful sometimes for them to know, a bit more. But I don't feel that it has been
That big of a culture shift for you, a shift.
Yeah, I mean also because we are who we are.
Yeah.
It's what you see.
But do you post like different things? Like do you have like a Finsta, like a fake Instagram account and everywhere? It's like only your friends.
No.
No?
No, I don't think so.
It's like Jamus, the real one, and then after that it's like Jamus Cool
The
Boy.
real Jamus.
The real Jamus and Jamus Cool Boy.
So one of the earliest advice I got when I stepped into this role was that you should be yourself always. And I can't imagine possibly doing this. It's tiring enough to do what we do as ourselves. And
Without
then
putting on an
without
additional
also
layer.
having to do it with two selves.
Right.
So I could not possibly be more than who I am. So I like to say I'm an open book. So whatever you see pretty much is what you get.
But being on social media now as like a politician, do you think there's a different level to what you can't post, what you shouldn't
Honestly,
post?
Jamus, whatever you see he posts is him.
Oh.
For better or worse.
Pretty much.
People
There is
do
no
wonder
filter.
whether it's like a PR person
exactly.
sometimes
No,
advising
no.
you.
So
I mean,
it's
not
just
so-
me.
It's just him being himself.
I think it's that consistency in who we are is ultimately what will be revealed. So here's the funny thing: the first time people hear me and I use certain phrases and terms, so
I wonder what
wonder what the
phrases and
term
terms
is.
we're talking about.
well, so here's the thing: my wife, when she first heard that, she laughed out loud, not because she thought it was unusual, but because she thought
so
it was
you.
so me.
Aw.
So
She's
once,
like, "That's
that's
him."
him. Yep. So once you accept that that's actually who I am, then
Right.
you'll realize that that's just who I am all the time.
Yeah, if you want to be colloquial and cut down what he just said, uncle is just being uncle.
Oh no! It's only okay when you say it.
We like to use the word quirky around here. As like DJs, we have KPIs to hit when it comes to postings and stuff, right? On social media and everything. Do you guys as politicians, right, are they like, maybe you all should post a bit more to get your names out there? Like, post more this, post more that, do like a TikTok trend kind of
Yeah,
thing?
you don't have a social media manager like forcing you to do this.
So okay, I'm terrible at social media. I don't like it, and I even like on a personal level, like it's not something that I do. So it's actually hard for me. But of course, you do have to get some certain messages out and all that. So I know that I probably should be posting a bit more, and we don't get any.
Right, so you
we
don't get
have
the
any.
nagging.
There's no KPIs or there's no internal directive that you had to follow this and.
Well, for me, I post when I think I have something valuable to say. I write all my own posts, so it's important that I am invested in what I'm
It's actually
trying
from
to
you.
say and present.
Yeah.
So if I feel some kind of compunction to push something out, then I feel that it's much better to just not say it at all.
Right. But now everything is on social media. It's on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, everything, including parliamentary debates sometimes, right? We get to see this in that space. And do you guys feel any pressure knowing that, now being in parliament, having a debate, the whole world is going to be seeing this, do I have to change my leadership style? Do I have to say a certain way,
The
change
way
my
you present
personality?
yourself,
Exactly,
is it? Yeah.
Honestly, Parliament's a serious place.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
you shouldn't feel that you would be worried about the glare of lights because you need to take the role seriously. So we present ourselves the same way as I've repeatedly said that there as we would want ourselves to be presented regardless of whether the cameras are on or not.
I mean, as serious as Parliament is, the question always comes back: does anybody fall asleep during your parliamental situations?
Well, I can say we always stay awake.
Coming back to it, right? When you go for all these visits, how do you really prepare for it?
There's not so much a need.
prep.
Of course, when you knock on the door, we always introduce ourselves. There's a spiel that you kind of get used to already. But then beyond that, then it's just regular conversation. It's meet just like how we are having. And I guess the one difference is that we ask if there's specific feedback about either the estate or a concern that they have at the national level, that we can take it up. And that's how that conversation proceeds.
I think when you're talking about leadership, right, there's so many different aspects towards this, but we gotta kind of change gears here, because I need to ask, being a leader as a politician, as an MP, right? Obviously, like you said, everybody always sees that, but nobody sees what happens behind closed doors. So when you guys go home, does that translate to your parenting style? Does it translate to you being a partner? Or do you switch off? Do you leave the MP outside the door, you close the door, and then you're like, I'm Jamus, I'm Ting, I'm not like... And I know you keep saying, always the same, but it has to be a little bit different,
Well,
right?
I'll tell you one thing that's the same.
Yeah.
No one listens to me.
Oh no!
I'm
You
used
didn't
to it.
disagree. I'm kidding.
I'm a father of a 5-year-old daughter, so I know there's like...
He's in a household of women.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so you're a very
it's
good
all
listener.
Very similar, both in and
We
out.
talked about active listening.
Yes.
Listening.
Yeah.
Right. No, but do you guys think you guys have to change that a little bit?
Perhaps in one thing.
Yeah.
So obviously my daughter is 5, and she doesn't necessarily always know what is right or wrong and what's safe and what's unsafe. So sometimes you do have to lay down the law when she's trying something particularly dangerous. Then you have to step in and say, no, that is not okay. And also to teach her things like morals and how to behave, not to talk back to elders, not to hit, and so on. So as much as we model that ourselves, there are times when to a 5-year-old, you do have to be proactive in channeling that.
I mean, to be honest, that as a parent, you are your child's prefrontal cortex. So you literally are your child's executive. You are meant to replace, because that part of the brain
Not developed yet.
doesn't develop until your mid-20s.
Yeah.
Like fully developed. So you talk about full development.
Yeah.
Everything else is developed, but until the mid-20s, especially for men.
Yeah, for some guys still haven't
We are
developed.
just slow.
I'm looking at him.
But you see, this is with kids, right? Obviously with kids, there's always I wouldn't say a blueprint, but everybody knows, you got to tell them what's right, what's wrong. But how do you deal with a partner when it comes to like a disagreement, or how you deal with the kids? Because do you think it's just, yes, I'm just a partner, or do you think the leadership that you've had to develop as an MP has translated into your relationship with your partner?
So it is about coming to compromise. And of course, to the extent I learned some skills of compromise in the political arena, I bring that to my relationship with my
So it's
partner.
beneficial. It's beneficial in a good way.
Yes,
In a good way.
But I think it's really, really important that you come to an agreement about how to raise a child. There's nothing worse than seeing parents disagree about something, because the child doesn't know any better. They don't know who to listen to. So I think it is important that we come to an agreement over when something is right and something we agree with, and then we transmit that to our daughter.
I am incredibly close to my parents, and I'm the only daughter also. So they always say the father-daughter bond is something different, right? So I don't know whether I was the boss of my dad when I was growing up, because I think
He can answer the question.
Yes.
Because I think I definitely
is
got
nodding.
my way with my dad. Everything my mom said you can't do, I know that my dad will let me do.
As did my sister with my dad.
Oh,
Yeah, right.
so
2
history
data
re-
points.
History repeats itself.
Wow. So I think there's a lot of things that we kind of intertwined with both being a leader inside work, outside of work, at home, and everything, right? But I think the one thing that leaders will always have to encounter is tough conversations, tough decision making, right? And the question that I want to ask is, how do you make those tough decisions in Parliament, outside Parliament, in your own work life? Like, how do you do these decisions? Obviously, you've got a team behind you, you've got your partners, but the internal conflict, how do you fight that?
Have you had a conversation with a 7-year-old or 8-year-old who thinks that they're always right?
I mean,
It's daily practice.
That's good practice. That's good
daily
practice.
it is, yeah.
No, I mean, again, like I think as much as possible when you can, try and, have people around you who also, I guess, have a slightly different perspective and maybe come at it from a different angle. And I think that's why we talk about beauty of teams.
Yeah.
Yeah, because as long as you don't want to be in a situation where everyone's like, oh, yeah, that's, and therefore that's where all the blind spots come out.
Yeah.
And that's where we feel that having an opposition rather than having one party dominant. I feel that that's actually very, very important.
You want people to challenge you, I feel, in a way, right? If your whole team is just agreeing with you, and
a bunch of
you will
yes
never
men.
learn.
Yeah. So I mean, we were just joking about, but it's literally even with your kids. My kids are maybe a little bit older, so I think I know best. But when they challenge me, I think it's also having that humility to understand that sometimes maybe the kid is right and you're wrong.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know how often it actually happens.
Once in a while.
It could happen.
It could happen.
And sometimes we do make mistakes. I mean, parents make mistakes all the time. We jump to conclusions which are wrong. We tell our kids what they need when we don't understand where they are. So I think all of that, to be honest, is really good practice for the wider world.
Yeah, if I could take off from that, obviously, I think it's really important to start any decision making with a full information set. So not just in terms of listening to different perspectives, which is what Ru was mentioning, but also to draw in an evidence base for when one versus another policy may be useful or better or more valuable, and to understand the trade-offs between the two. So you want to start there. But in the end, sometimes you do have to make, as you said, a call.
Yeah.
And that's when you are guided by what is your internal moral compass. And if it is facing true north and you are convinced by that, then you just need to plunge in, make that decision, and stand behind it because you know that was the right thing to do.
Okay, so before we wrap up, I've got one final question for you guys, Gabe. What are some changes that you think you believe would really improve Singapore's leadership?
I think a lot of the time, maybe it's easy, and I think we're guilty of it sometimes. It's almost like, it's quite superficial. Oh, okay, I listen to all the viewpoints, therefore I've done this. It becomes a bit of doing it for the sake of doing it. But I feel that, it has to be a very meaningful, real respect for, obviously within reason, for people who disagree with you. And to also be able to, to actually meaningfully and respectfully engage, rather than if you're my opponent, everything is, wrong, or I don't agree. And I think that where we are in terms of that respect is something that I would like, I think we can improve on that. I used to practice kendo, and one of the rules of kendo is that in a kendo competition, when you score a point against your opponent, if you cheer, this is very Japanese, but if you cheer or you celebrate that, the point gets deducted.
Wow.
And the reason, thinking behind that, and I know it sounds a little bit extreme, but the thinking behind that is that your opponent has also put in the hours and the effort and the training, and therefore they feel it's very disrespectful of your opponent's effort. I think the takeaway from that is that, whatever it is, you also need to be able to respect your opponent and, their journey. I think this is something that our society, not just in the political sphere, but just generally, our society really, really needs. Yeah.
From a slightly different angle, I think that we in Singapore often have in our minds what a leader mold typically would be. They did well in school, went to certain schools and universities and so on. And I think that diminishes the opportunity for us to have leaders from a completely different mold, people who may not have gone to specific schools, but were able, through the course of their lives and their experiences, to demonstrate leadership in their own way, build their own business, become successful in their own spheres, and they bring something valuable too, extremely valuable. And when we only have everyone along a fixed cookie cutter, then we lose a richness, not just in terms of representation, but genuinely in terms of the very best people that we can identify to bring us forward.
Wow.
Well said.
Yeah.
Well said.
Wow. Thank you so much for being here with us today. Obviously, we've really broken down the whole concept of leadership between both men and women and what it's like for you guys as well. I think I understand a little bit more now too.
No, do you?
Just
Okay, are you ready to take the lead, Aves?
No.
Of the team?
Not yet.
Ready?
Not yet.
Okay, if you enjoyed this entire episode, please follow us on all social media platforms. It's clarity.co.
And you can also catch us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Me Listen too, okay?
Till next time. Bye.
See you guys. apparently these days AI is pretty good at guessing on the basis of conversations what your MBTI is. I just saw it this morning, which is scary in and of itself.
I asked AI to do a math question for me and they got it wrong. I don't trust AI.
Yeah, okay. You've been
Did
asking
you?
the
Yeah, I was like, my
You're
math
asking the wrong.
Bad enough
You know,
already,
you know that there are
You got to go to
courses.
the paid tier. That's what
Yeah,
you got to
I
do.
don't have
Oh,
money
that's
for
what
that.
they're making you do.